fight.
Awesome. Honestly. Like we talked about this before the game. Zavs is gonna have like a really high hill to climb laning against Super Red.
Yep.
But Zavs just comes on in and says, not a problem at all. His KDA is clean, his GPM is very high, and that's on top of a very solid kill participation too.
I mean, up against Super Red, he needs to recall twice, if I'm not mistaken, on the laning stages. So from that moment, you know Zaf was much behind in terms of gold lead, in terms of farming, right? But again, how he climbed back up those deficit, the gold GPM, the gold, and managed to get those kills and rack up this KDA. But let's take a look, let's have a hear mic check from MPX and
Dia nak gelau macam Ui, tapi saya pukul tadi.
Nampak sangat kan tu?
Hello, 4 flicker. Oh yeah, baby. Yeah, I love you. Tolong turunkan air gaya lah. Nice one. Nice one. Okay, reset balik, reset balik. Boleh pergi tak? Boleh pergi tak? Boleh pergi tak? Kau mati lah! Dia boleh mati ke? Wah, wait, leg. Aku leg.
well, very interesting. A bit of banter against Gorgeous, but never mind. Let's not talk about that. Let's more focus on the differences between these two things. What was the biggest difference from this match, Gideon?
Well, I think, the biggest difference came down to how Zavs and the rest of
Up the game, make space for his own teams.
Personally, I know for a fact that Super Gorgeous doesn't really like to play the Frederick, especially in the EXP lane, only because, as you mentioned before, it caps him to what he can do. You can absorb...
This game number 1.
Yeah, a lot of it just came down to how the early game was going to be played, but more importantly, that mid game, right? We saw a lot of SRG just dominating, finding steals after steals, but honestly, when it came down to control over the map, there was a lack of it, right? You can definitely see that SRG is giving respect where respect is due. And especially when they start moving towards the gold lane, that's when the disrespect happens. But down here, you notice that it's about disengaging. They're playing for these neutral objectives and hoping they can actually get ahead.
The thing is, I feel like a lot of these team fights were very scrappy, which is kind of unusual for Red Giants. They usually have a certain degree of control even when the team fights look very split up. But here, it feels very reactive, almost as if like facing against their former tier 2 rivals. Evoke something primal within them. Go back to your base instincts and leave it all on the field. And that just plays into NC. They have a lot more tools here compared to, say, Pancake. He needed time to get that Minwen Fury out. And every time he went in, NC instantly scattered. Their reaction was perfect.
And I thought it was the moment for SRG to close out the game. But again, in the nick of time, Hawk was able to defend their own base. And once Hawk did that, this is what happened next, where they just, I would say, separate SRG really, really well into like 2 to 3 different groups.